So quite from We can start. Yeah, please.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ما يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وإذا أراد الله بقوم سوءا فلا مرد الله وما لهم من دونه من وال. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Allah does not change the condition of a people unless they change what is within themselves. But when Allah wills a people's punishment, there can be no turning back of it, and they will find besides Him no protector. Now, I recited this ayah in my last khutbah 2 weeks ago, and this khutbah is a little bit of a follow-up from the previous khutbah, but in a different perspective. I wanted to start off asking, what is Islam? What is al-Islam? Now, many of you may be thinking submission to Allah, right? This is the definition we know, and yes, that's correct. But I'm not asking the definition of Islam. I'm asking, what is Islam? What is Islam to us? What is Islam to me, to you, to everyone here? What is Islam to the individual? And what is Islam to the collective group, the collective mindset? These are two very important questions, and I think, inshallah, hopefully we can have a better understanding of this concept by the end of this khutbah, inshallah. But to start off, I think many Muslims have this sort of idea that Islam sort of starts and ends with the 5 pillars, right? We say, Bunya al-Islam, that's a hadith. Bunya al-Islam. Islam was built on 5 pillars, the 5 obligations. Your shahada, your salah, your fasting, your zakat, and your hajj. And we know this, but a lot of Muslims tend to think that these are the only obligations of what it means to be a Muslim, right? This is the mindset we have. We think that as long as we are fasting and we are praying and we pay our zakat annually and then try to save for hajj and go for hajj, then we're good, inshallah, right? That's all that we need. This is the common mindset of Muslims, that this is all we need. But we fail to realize that these are the minimal obligations of what it means to be a Muslim. Minimal. Does not cover all of the obligations of what it means to be a Muslim. There are many more obligations listed in the Quran and Sunnah, but we fail to focus on them. We fail to emphasize these points. Right? There are so many things we can talk about. We can talk about the Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, the enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. This is an obligation to all Muslims. We should be enjoying the good and forbidding the evil. This is a part of all Muslims, not just a handful. Right? Jihad bin nafs, fighting against your desires. This is a requirement upon Muslims. Jihad through da'wah tabligh, spreading, conveying the message of Islam. And yes, spreading the message of Islam is a requirement. A lot of Muslims, we tend to think that, if I have very good character, that is sufficient for da'wah. But this is not true. This is not correct. This is an incorrect view. Yes, our character is a form of da'wah, but it does not fulfill the obligation. The obligation must be filled through verbal. It must be verbally, right? We have to tell people about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to tell them about what Islam is. We cannot just be like, they know I'm Muslim and they see I'm a good person and maybe they'll convert one day. That's not how Islam is. And our job isn't to convert people. It's just to literally convey. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide the guidance and wisdom from there, but we just have to provide the message. We just have to convey it. Not provide, but convey it. And then, there are many more obligations we can focus on. Jihad fi sabilillah in itself is an obligation, and there's so many different obligations listed within the Quran and Sunnah, right? Even controlling our anger while we're fasting, we know this is an obligation, right? If it nullifies our fasting, then it's an obligation that we control our anger while we're fasting. In general, we should control our anger, but specifically while fasting. The point I'm trying to make is that Islam goes 5 pillars, right? And I believe we all know this. Even those who have converted to Islam recently will probably already know this. But the problem is how we treat Islam. We treat Islam as if the 5 pillars are all that really matter, right? And this becomes a problem, especially when we teach it to future generations. They think Islam really comes down to just those 5 pillars. If you continuously emphasize one thing, that's the one thing the others your audience will focus on, right? That's all they will hear. That's all they remember. So if we're constantly only focusing on salah and fasting, and I'm not saying we shouldn't focus on those things, but if that's our only emphasis, our only focuses, then the future generations, that's all they will think of what Islam is. And this is a harsh statement, but how does that make it any different from Christianity or Judaism at that point? Because those religions, they are not a deen, they are not a way of life. They are religions. And what is a religion? It is a collection of rituals and ceremonies, right? Our salah, our fasting, our zakat, these are rituals and ceremonies, right, that we are required. But they do not cover the concept of a deen, a way of life. So what is it when we say deen, we say Islam is a deen, it's a way of life? What does that mean? What are we saying when we say that to both Muslims and non-Muslims alike? When we say that, Islam is our way of life, well, what does that mean? It's not just about eating with your right hand because that's the sunnah. It goes much beyond that. Right? We have to understand Islam on the individual and collective level. So, as a Muslim, as a part of this ummah, what is the obligation upon the Muslims overall? Right? And this is a question we have to dive deep and understand, and I can only focus so much time in a khutbah, but Islam covers more aspects than just, the obligations I mentioned, right? Sharia encompasses Islam. It encompasses Islam into the way of life. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically without Sharia, there is no Islam. The Sharia is requirement. A lot of Muslims like to think that Sharia is just law, right? That, there's punishments, there's required zakat and jizya and all these things. Sharia covers more than just law, though. It is literally the way of life. It is Islam, right? And we need to understand what that means, right? As an individual, I'm required to establish Islam. I'm required to establish Sharia in my household, right? First and foremost, within my heart. That's first and foremost. But next is the household. Because if I'm here on the pulpit delivering a khutbah, but my own spouse and children at home are not even praying salah, they're not fasting, they're not following Islam, then what I'm doing here is useless, meaningless. This will not help me on the day of judgment. Right? I'll be held accountable for the fact that my own household is not following Islam, that they're not following the Sharia. Right? So as a Muslim, I'm required to establish the Sharia in my household first, right? After myself, then my household. And then outside the household, it expands. It expands to what? The community, the society, the national level, right? And community is, alhamdulillah, the Muslim communities in America are growing very large very quickly. Right? And we have all these masajid and masajid centers in which we can have that establishment of Sharia inside the Muslim. Right? We can have that establishment of Sharia and bring people to Islam and bring the Muslims into the masjid itself. But our collective obligation isn't just Jama'ah or praying Isha together. That's not what it means about the collective obligation upon the Muslims. It goes beyond that. It means to establish Islam for further and out wide, right? Widespread, excuse me, not out wide, widespread. And what does that mean? It means that we continuously, wherever we are, Islam should be established. Now, obviously, we're not talking about, raising armies and establishing Sharia that manner. I'm not referring to that at all. I'm referring specifically to just understanding the concept of Islam and establishing your salah and where you are. That is a part of the Sharia, to establish the salah and your obligations wherever you are. So that way, the Islam coverage is widespread. I hope, inshallah, you guys can follow me in what I'm saying. But this is, it's a difficult concept to really explain in just a few minutes. But now, what else does the Sharia entail? What does that mean? If the ruling government is Sharia, and let's make this establishment that what we see in today's world and what we've had for the past 100 years, there is no real Sharia being established. Whatever is out there, no Sharia has been established in the past 100 years. It's not real Sharia, right? There are many countries that claim they're establishing Sharia, but they only establish parts of the Sharia, right? Maybe we'll establish only the punishment. But that's not Islam. If Islam is only known by its punishments, then it's not Islam. Right? If we're only following a portion of it, then it's not Islam. It's not Sharia. So we have to keep that in mind, that what we see outside today is not Sharia. But going back to my point, Sharia encompasses more than just your rituals and ceremonies. It includes what? Your economics, your society, your morals, your principles, your values, and the politics as well. And this is important to understand. The politics are included as well. Right? This is all part of Sharia. Politics and Islam are not two separate things. They are parallel. They're together. Without politics, your Islam is incomplete. It is just how it is. Right? A lot of Muslims have this concept that the pulpit, the khutbah, should only be focusing on Islam and not politics. This is a common complaint I hear often in many masajid. This is something that happens a lot. Right? Whenever something happens in another country, and if the khatib decides to speak about it, there are Muslims saying that, the Islam, the khutbah should only be about Islam. But if what's happening overseas, what's happening to our own brothers and sisters, if we don't consider that to be part of Islam, then what is it? Right? Because politics is a part of Islam, so without that, that's not Islam. Right? So we have to include what's happening around the world as a part of our Islam, because we are all affected by it. Right? This is the hadith that comes into play. That the ummah is like one body. If a pain inflicts a portion of that body, the whole ummah reacts. So this means it is required to be in understanding of what's happening and to be able to convey that. We should not think that the pulpit is only for talking about salah or mercy or fasting. That is not the only purpose. If you want examples from the seerah, look no further than just Prophet's regular khutbahs. First of all, his khutbahs were no more than 5 or 10 minutes. Why? Because they were reminders to the people. Right? He didn't have to sit there educating people in his khutbahs. He's just reminding them. But what is he reminding them about? Yes, maybe salah, maybe fasting, but that's not his only concerns. He and the Sahaba, they were revolutionaries. They were fighting day in, day out for Islam, for the sake of Islam, to establish Islam. That was their primary goal every single day. So the khutbahs address that. Right? The khutbahs are addressing what's happening around them and how to deal with that. And again, in just simple reminder formats. Nothing complicated, nothing complex, nothing too deep. Just simple reminder of what's happening around us and how to respond, how to deal with it. And that is many of Prophet Prophet's khutbahs. So to say that discussing current events or politics around the world that involves Muslims is not a part of Islam, then I'm sorry, we do not understand what Islam is. We do not understand what Islam is about if we are going to go and say that what's happening over there is only there, it does not affect me. Then this is not Islam. We do not understand Islam, and I know, again, it's a harsh statement, but it's a fact. We have to understand and address what's happening around us. We do not need to go into detail. We do not have to name specific people or parties, but at the very least, what better platform is there to convey what's happening overseas than the khutbah? Because the Muslims are required to be here. We're all required to be here. This is the best platform any khatib can have to address what's happening around the world. So Muslims should not just ignore this for the khutbah. This is actually the best time to talk about these issues, what's happening. As long as we're not causing harm or inciting any violence or inciting anything that would cause that we consider troublemaking or whatever, as long as those are not a part of the equation, then it's fine. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. We have this ability here in America to speak about these things. Right? Overseas, you do not have the right to speak on most issues. You cannot speak about current events in Egypt or Saudi Arabia. You don't have that right. There's consequences for that. But in America, we have that, alhamdulillah. And we should utilize that. And that was kind of my focus in my last khutbah, is that we have to utilize these rights. We should not be afraid to talk about these matters. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man. So, just to summarize, the khutbah is integral that we talk about all aspects of Islam in our khutbah, not just one portion or another, because some people may feel scared or whatever it may be. We have to address all portions of Islam in our khutbah, and that includes what is happening around the world. That is a fact. That has to be. Many masajid, unfortunately, do not even allow the khatibs to speak. And here in America, a lot of masajid, even in Richmond, they won't allow you to speak on current events. If you do, you won't come back for another khutbah. I promise you that. I can speak from experience. This is the reality of a lot of Muslims we face, because for whatever reason, I've addressed this already in my last khutbah, but we are scared basically to talk about current events, but we should not be. This affects our people. These are our people that we are talking about. Doesn't matter what country they're from or where they reside or where we live or where we're from. We're all Muslims, and we should all be focusing on the Muslim issues, right? Worldwide. And that is important to understand. In this khutbah, I do want to actually give a reminder on something that's aside from what we talked about today. And that is just basic etiquettes of the Jum'ah. And, there are many etiquettes that we're required, we know about for the Jum'ah. Right? We know that, for one, we have to remain silent during the khutbah. If you speak in utter word or whatever, then there's a major sin for this. Right? This is a big sin maybe not major sin, but it's a big sin to speak during the khutbah, for example. Right? There are many etiquettes. One of the most important etiquettes that I have addressed many times, and I will always continue to address, inshallah, is the timeliness. Right? Being on time is so crucial. And we seem to, for whatever reason, we don't take this very seriously. And I think the Prophet says that the angels close their books once once the Imam has given his salams. So if you're coming after I have given my salams, then you're not recorded in the books of the angels. So it's so important that we make sure we're on time. But it's not just for the hadith. It's not just because we're fulfilling an obligation, but it is simple. We are here to understand our Islam better, right? We want the reminders. We want to understand our Islam better. And how can that be the case if we're coming late and missing portions of the khutbah itself? Right? If you come in after the first khutbah is finished and you only hear the second part of the khutbah, what did you really gain? You're not going to understand. You're only going to hear whatever you heard. It's going to be out of context, because in most cases, the second part of the khutbah is a continuation of the first part. So if you only hear certain portions of the khutbah, and then you are offended by it or you don't like it, and then you make a complaint about it, that's a problem with you, not with others. It's not a problem with the khutbah, it's a problem with you, because we have to remember, we have to be on time, right? We have to be on time, we have to listen attentively to the whole khutbah. That's also an etiquette and obligation of the Jummah itself. It's not just to fall asleep, I'm sitting against the wall and we fall asleep now, this is very common. It's not a time to use your phone or text message. These are all things that violate our Jummah, right? We have to actually listen attentively to the khutbah, to the whole thing. And now, if after you listen to the whole khutbah, maybe the Imam has said something that is wrong, or the Khatib has said something that isn't correct, or that violates the Quran and the Sunnah in any manner, or maybe he said something that was purely a dangerous idea, then yes, you have the right to talk with the khatib afterwards, or submit the complaint however you will. But we have to be on time and listen to the whole khutbah first before we file these complaints. We have to be there for the whole thing so that we understand what the khatib is saying. Because if you, again, you only hear one portion of the khutbah and not the rest of it, then you're going to take it out of context. And I'm sorry to say this, but you do not have a right for complaining if you do not know what you're complaining about. This is just simple fact. You cannot go into your college classrooms or whatever, your lectures. You can't go into your business meeting halfway in, complain that, what is this? What is this meeting about? You don't have that right. You were late at the end of the day. And we are violating a sunnah of Prophet when we are coming late as well. So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our late comings and our shortcomings. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. Ya Allah, please help strengthen our iman and make us among the mu'mineen. Ya Allah, please protect us from the fitna of Dajjal. Ya Allah, please help ease the suffering of the Muslims around the world. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون أقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
This much, yes. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله من حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters who are listening to our khutbah, inshallah. I'm thankful to our Imam. I'm going to say that just very quickly few things. As Ramadan has gone, now we are getting ready for another festival and Hajj. Some people are getting ready to go to the Hajj. We do the Eid al in the back. We'll give you more details as we go on. And then how to, if you just decided to sacrifice here, that what the procedure is. Inshallah, we are putting it together. Jazakallah for that. Maintain our sunnah of Prophet. And our Imam mentioned few things. We make dua that Allah Ta'ala give him the blessing for that. And blessing for all of you to listen to the dua and stay for sunnah. No.
I don't think it's required. If it's not required outside,
Yeah, it's
we're not actually fulfilling the sunnah. So
I,
the sop of the sop.
I don't disagree with you. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that much. But
In none of the masajid, they're doing
this is the only masjid that does it. It's the only masjid that does it.